Jim Fennier.
Hey, how you doing? Jim Fennier. Conservative free trade deals, liberal sponsorship scandals, they're really one and the same. They've committed mass human rights abuses, they've sold their country off to American interests and screwed us. The problem is having a toe in the party line. One of the largest failed nation states in world history is just next door to us. We can look to America and see what vision the conservative program has for us. Tax credits are great for people who have money, but totally meaningless to those who don't. You cannot get a tax credit based on a zero income. This will result in the poorest people of our nation being held responsible for the debt of a system that they cannot use. There really will be no new deals for Canadians. They will only shift spending around. Farmers have nothing to gain from a conservative government that believes the Americans should control the price of goods in Canada. The greatest problem in farming today is the belief that subsidies to farmers are bad, while allowances to large corporations are good. The big parties have held Parliament hostage, preventing us from bringing forward important social changes while denying us the right to a fully functioning government. My party's policy on the legalization of marijuana is the only platform in Canada upon which new tax and tourism dollars could be generated. Not only would it take the money out of the hands of criminals, but it would free up dollars being wasted in the judicial system. Government regulations would also protect minors, much in the same way that the Liquor Control Board controls liquor. Ask your member what he did to change anything in Ottawa. There is very little that he will tell you aside from the fact that he voted with his party leader without due regard for his constituency. He has not helped our farmers, the disabled, or our seniors, or our students. He has not reduced wait times in our hospitals or improved local infrastructure. Violent crime is on the rise. What have you done, Mr. McKenzie, and where have you been? In fact, your last 2 years have been spent bad-mouthing the incumbent Liberal government planning the next takeover of Canada by your big Western-based Reform Party. If I were elected, I would push for universal education at no cost to any student. Canada needs to combat failing literacy. Cost-free education would improve the lives of millions who are saddled by high tuition debt load. Free medical school would decrease the doctor shortage. How can the government see fit to charge someone full value for an education and then restrict their wage capacity? If I were to represent Oxford, I would stand up for every individual in the riding. I would demand public input and request that all people put forward their ideas. I would build on consensus, not division, and I would seek an open and free vote in Parliament for every member through secret balloting. I would stand up for Oxford. Ottawa has failed us, our member has failed us. It's time that we have an actual voice here in Oxford. Our local incumbent is a mouthpiece for Stephen Harper and his American ideas. These guys have all been standing up for Canada, while the rest of us have been at her defense. We need local solutions for local problems, and I see to it that Oxford has view and voice heard. Everybody knows here that the squeakiest wheel gets the grease, and I challenge any of you to point out anyone up here with a bigger mouth than mine. Look better. Already discussed the idea that secondary education should be free and available to every student across the board. There should be no restrictions. The way that I would fund it would be, number one, the Fraser Institute from British Columbia released figures stating that in Canada, tax benefits reaped alone from marijuana sales in Canada would bring about $2.5 billion a year. That's a pretty conservative estimate from a very conservative think tank. So I would think that there's probably a lot more money available than that, combined with tourism dollars coming into the country. I think that those dollars can be easily used to project our education standards way above any other country.
Thank you.
Well, all of those things are already happening. We already have people out there smoking joints, driving around. We already have people smoking joints and hookahs and jumping in their car and going for a drive or on some bill or a boat or anything like that, or walking on the streets. Those people are already existing, they're already doing these things. The health consequences are already out there. Right now, Health Canada can't hand out information on the adverse effects of smoking marijuana because of the way the law is set up. Although it seems kind of dubious to me that they hand out methadone like downtown here. You know, so when you're talking about harm reduction and things like that, you know, there are a lot of lies that have been created about the way things work. Number one is that when you go to the liquor store, if you're underage, they're going to ask you for a piece of ID. If, you know, and generally, if you look like 25 or under, they're going to ask you for an ID. You know, right now the way it is, if you're 12, 13, 11, 10, 9 years old, you can walk into anybody's house, buy a and 75,000 Canadians a year are arrested by police that should be out there taking care of hardcore crime instead of maybe they should be catching someone with guns instead of catching a guy smoking a joint behind his house when he's drinking a beer. There are things that should be done instead of that.
Position on marijuana. What is your position on other drugs?
Wow! That's a pretty lofty question as well. I think that the only way to reduce the problem with the drug problem, number one, is not by a bunch of cops going out in the street and beating the crap out of people and dragging them up to jail, because that doesn't solve the social problem behind why people are addicted to some of the harder drugs. What the problem is that it is a social net behind it. A lot of people are destitute. A lot of people that can't afford to feed themselves can afford to smoke crack yet, which is kind of appalling. So you have to look at all the social conditions why people are abusing drugs to begin with. But I think that the only way to bring any harm reduction into any effect is to actually get rid of all the prohibitions on drugs, and that way you can actually regulate and control who's actually accessing them, and then you know where all the drugs are, and the people that are actually growing the drugs and selling the hardcore drugs or whatever would be pretty well out of business. And the criminal organizations that are around all of those industries would lose the vast majority of their funding. So you'd see a crime reduction, number one, and I think that you would see harm reduction, number two, before you would see anything else. But I believe that all drugs should pretty well be legalized across the board and then regulated heavily. Well, I would think that part of the bad thing is to sit here and try and say that we brought up millions of dollars and we shoved them in the federal coffers to direct it specifically to any one program. The issues of that happening is absolutely slim. Multi-layers of bureaucracy and stuff like that. And last night I was at Yellow Canada this week, there was a lady that pointed out the gas tax revolt that we pretty well had here in 1979, 1980, that area. And she was talking about the fact that the gas taxes hadn't been put into the proper programs, and that was a problem. So one thing is you don't want to get up and say that that should be the case, but what should be the case is the money should go into one huge thing. Then they should look at all of these programs, and all of the programs should be funded from that, And I think the number one thing that should be is that the corporations do not need a tax cut. I don't know any friendly corporation. I've never had a hug or a kiss from any big-ass corporation or anything like that. So we should feel sorry for them. We shouldn't feel sorry for any big corporation. In fact, I'm sorry to this morning, but 125 million or 120 million or even 100 million to tie out is terrible. When you got farmers that can't even feed their own stinking families here, we've got a big corporation, 1,300 people are going to get a job. Most of them are not going to come from Oxford County. I'd like to see them come up with the numbers and tell us how many people will come from Woodstock or Oxford County. Those things will not happen here, right? There's only going to be a few jobs, so don't let them lie to you about that, right? And that's the problem. The corporations have taken us over.
Minimum drug sentencing, while trials in Vancouver as to walk-in clinics for heroin addiction have shown proven results. I was just wondering what your party stands beyond that.
We'll start with Jim then.
Jeez, it's always works. Okay. Well, that's a big question as well, but I don't think that minimum locking people up in the warehouse doesn't do you any good. That's a phenomenal waste of time. And anybody that thinks to lock up a bunch of people for drug offenses, is the right thing to do. They're completely wrong and being misled by some right-wing crazy stuff. I don't know, but I do know that we need to have better access to services. The people that are having addiction problems should be able to access services. People that are addicted right now to pot, like I see lots of people in the business that I'm in. The people that are addicted, they can't even go for help, because if they do, they're stupid doctors and turn them into the children's aid and get kids. And that's just so wrong. So you're leading people in this cycle of abuse, and there's no way to get out of it. And this is the responsibility of government, and it's a failure of all policies, provincial, federal, and municipal governments, not to try and accommodate people and trying to bring them out of their misery instead of leaving them shoved in that whole misery.